Hi, I'm Jamie Fontaine. I'm the Administrative and Outreach Coordinator for the AJ Drexel Autism Institute. I would like to thank everybody who is watching this live and everybody who watches this in the future for joining us for a live session of our Father's Autism Support Group, which is run by Dr. Robert Meseeth and Dr. Michael Hannon. I'm going to hand it over to the two of them since I'm very obviously not anyone's father. And I hope that you enjoy this discussion and that you can get a lot out of it, because I think the members of this group really do. So thank you all so much for sharing, and let's have a great talk.
So good morning, folks. We are so happy to have you with us today. My name is Michael Hannon. I'll share a little bit about myself and a little bit about the evolution of our group, and then I'm going to toss the virtual mic to Robert, Dr. Nassif, to share a little bit more. And then we're going to jump right in, if that's okay with folks. Literally 2 academic years ago, in September 2019, I want to say, we began with the support of the AJ Drexel Autism Institute to offer a support group for fathers of individuals with autism. And Dr. Nassif was initially approached to convene this group, given his extensive experience in supporting families and fathers and individuals of people with autism. And he invited me to engage with him. And over the course of just about 2 years now, we have grown to reach a national and at times international audience, particularly with the onset of the pandemic. And we've gotten together at least once a month, if not more, to connect with each other, to learn from each other, in efforts to be better men, better fathers, better partners, and better people. And so it's my privilege to be here in this brotherhood with these gentlemen here today. And typically we have very few rules, one of which is we're not here to solve each other's problems. We're here to learn about our shared experiences, learn about our unique experiences, and how we grow as a result of them. And so, again, I want to bid you welcome and look forward to engaging with you today. Robert.
Thanks, Mike. Very well said. I don't know what I can add to this, but I'll add a few things. I have an adult son with autism, Tariq, and he's 41 years old, and he's, inspired me and taught me and changed me in ways I could have never dreamed of. I certainly am happy to be the person I am and not the person I might otherwise have been. So if you're wondering who I might otherwise have been, I might have been that guy at the Little League game yelling at the ump, yelling at the coach, very, competitive, goal-oriented, unable to sit back and just enjoy the scene, let the kids have fun, and I'm glad I'm not that guy. I'm so glad I'm not that guy. And my son, who doesn't speak, taught me to accept him just as he is. And that's the lesson of life that has changed me. So I'm really happy to be doing this with Mike and be doing this with Drexel. We've been able to reach a very diverse audience, and we've discussed themes of racial, economic, climate justice, and access to services for our children, and ableism. And serendipitously, today is Juneteenth, a holiday that is long, long, long in coming. And I'm a little curious how Congress can pass Juneteenth as a holiday and refuse to ensure voters' rights. So we're still living in troubled waters, and we have to persist. And we can do that just as who we are, as fathers, as men, as loving people with autism who need equity as much or more than anybody else, because they're the most vulnerable members of any society, are the aged and the disabled. So I welcome you here. I look forward to the conversation. Let's get started. One of the things that came up just before we got live was the idea of like, what do we get out of meeting together? What have you gotten over the years or months or weeks that you've been here? Let's open the floor to that. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hello, my name is Jonathan, and I have a 4.5-year-old son with autism. I started with this group back in September of 2019, and it has benefited me greatly. I'm actually a stay-at-home father. I was seeking a support group for fathers and found out that there are none. And in the tri-state area, I'm out of Philadelphia, this was the only one I could find and was eager to be involved. What I've learned and from this group, one of the first things I learned was the acceptance part that my son has autism. And it's definitely a process, and that once you accept this and maybe put down these expectations that you had for your child, and realize they have autism, but many other doors and windows open up after you accept that fact and move forward. The other part that I learned with this group is that there's other men out there that are dealing with the same thing, the same problems, the same situations and successes and frustrations. And just that knowledge that there's others going through that same thing has been very helpful. The meetings online have been helpful because we didn't have to travel down to Drexel, which made it a little more easy to go to. But I encourage anybody to join this group and our discussions because it is very helpful for you, and therefore it's helpful to your child that has autism. Thanks. Anyone have anything else?
So how about we go Matt and then Arnell?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I was just looking back. I saw that the first one of these meetings I attended was June last year. So this is the 1 year. And unlike John, I wasn't seeking it. My wife and I there was a counselor that we see through some of the services that our son gets. I have an 11-year-old son who's minimally verbal, not nonverbal, but close, and sees the world in a very different way. And the counselor told me about the fact this happened and sent me, the email newsletter. And it's like I walked in a way, it's like I found my tribe, even, now a very diverse tribe, which is one of the things I love about it. Not only races, backgrounds, locations, and things, but also the fact that there's so many different ages. Like any given week, we might have, like, Robert has a son who's almost exactly my age. John has a child who's 4, and I'm somewhere in between. You can see people different places on the path, and it's, for one, that's helpful perspective. And sometimes we'll share something like, well, here's what I've been doing, and it's really helpful in a practical way too. But mostly it's just a matter of, like, not feeling like you're alone. Just knowing that like, I feel like, especially as parenting and caregiving can be a really lonely experience sometimes. It's really easy to just, in your worst moments, like, turn on your spouse who's neurotypical, because who else, you can't blame your child. And so whatever the case, it's nice that, like, there's certain things I feel like we can talk about in here, like, messy incidents, meltdowns, all kinds of things that like, ordinary conversation, I don't know how I would even code it to where it would make sense to other people without just seeming really strange. But here we could talk about, like, stuff like that, and 3 or 4 people at least are like, yep, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And it's like, thank you. You feel heard. And I really do appreciate that. So in any case, yeah, it's been a very good experience for me, connect to some of these guys even offline. Kaveh there, who's a dentist by trade, when we were trying to figure out what to do for sedative dentistry for my son, it kind of helped with some ideas, and that worked out beautifully. So yeah, it's a lot of like emotional support, just being there for each other, and sometimes even some practical things as well. It's something I look forward to whenever we get a chance to meet. So thank you everyone, and thank you Drexel for doing this. I agree that the fact it's online makes it easier, so I'm not making the hour-and-a-half commute in the center city for it. But anyway, yeah, I encourage anyone who is especially its parents or knows someone who is that might be interested in this to join in. So anyone else? Arnell, I think you're next.
Hi. Yeah, I think that the theme seems to be, and I say a theme because I felt alone also, that I was just going through this process myself because I didn't realize there were other fathers out there who were having similar experiences. I'm not afraid to say that it was actually my wife who found this group and said, you should go, you really should go. Gosh, and now it's been almost 2 years later that it was really, looking back on it, a wonderful thing that she had found it and encouraged me. As far as my wife, I know that she had already been connected with her group. The women seem to be very tight as far as the support groups they have for each other. And I didn't realize that until I found this group, what that meant. And so I'm really thankful to be here and sharing with other fathers. And Matt, the things you said about kids having meltdowns, when you're describing these stories, we're all just nodding, oh yeah, we know, yeah. So we just have this feeling of connection with others. It's just wonderful. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jesper. I have an 11-year-old autistic son, and I found this group. I started working with Dr. Nassif about 7 years ago, as far as I can recall, when I was first presented with the fact that my son was on the spectrum, whatever that means. And I had the first order of business was to accept the fact that he had autism, which is a label that I did not want to slap on my son. And so we found an autism specialist through the pen system that I work in, and I decided to start working with Dr. Ross. Rather than sending him to therapy and teaching him he was different, there was something wrong, I wanted to learn about, what this was. And through the work with Robert, I found acceptance to the fact that my son is autistic and probably very much like me. It wasn't invented when I was a kid. I'm 60. So, and through Robert, I found this group. But before the group was started, Gregor himself, that's my son's name, decided that he wanted to see Robert on a regular basis. He had been, yeah, I want to do this myself. Now, I originally started seeing Robert because I was so frustrated. My temper was flaring up when there was meltdowns, which is not acceptable behavior for me. So I needed to have a look at myself, which Robert helped me with. And again, Gregor joined our therapy. We meet bi-weekly or as needed. And in 2019, I guess, when the group was started, I was lucky enough I could attend. But the last year during the pandemic, the groups have met every weekend when I'm working down in the emergency department. So I haven't been able to meet you. I know some of you, but not everyone. Now, I started an hour ago. I told Gregor what we're going to do today, and I asked him if he would give me some feedback what we have done better and what I'm doing right and wrong at this time, And this is what he told me. He says, well, your temper has gotten a lot better. We said we got tools in place that will either one of us has a meltdown, we take time out and says, I can't talk about this now, and why don't we just take a breather and then talk about it later? And that has worked for the most part. Obviously, I'm the one being older that it's easier for me to remove myself than him sometimes. But boy, he said that, oh, you're doing a lot better with your temper. One of the things that he did tell me And I'll share this very fast. During the pandemic, Gregor has been able to, he has a problem with a lot of kids. If he works with one person, he's doing fine. And he was all of a sudden found friends in the neighborhood that he wanted to go out and play with. And I got so excited that, of course, I started pushing the issue. and he has withdrawn himself a little bit because he got overwhelmed. He says, please don't tell me how to choose my friends and how many and when I should play, you know. But the fact that I am able to ask for help for this because I accepted it, and that I have Robert as a coach and somebody to run this by on a regular basis, boy, has that helped. I am a firm believer, being a long-time member of AA, that if you have an issue, find people who are like-minded and share experience with them so you don't have to carry it yourself. So, you know, I think that's all I got to say from now, but boy, I can't wait until my work schedule changes so I can attend these group meetings on a regular basis today. Thank you.
It's neat. Am I muted right now? Hey guys, my name's Pete. I've been a member of this group for about a year as well. I have 12-year-old twins with autism, a boy and a girl, and I'm autistic myself. Diagnosed after them, which is pretty common. And some of the strengths of this group have been the diversity of having two different, the diversity, I mean, the autism spectrum, there's so many different things that go on there, right? But the diversity that's present here and sort of the families and the people, everything from ability to communicate. There's a lot of, I mean, there's being able to understand and empathize with other people has been a theme that I've been working hard on personally over the course of the last year. And being able to hear other families and hear the common stories has really been a big deal, but also hearing the things where we are so different. So my kids are pretty functional. And so hearing the stories of the experience of families where it's hard to communicate or the difficulties to communicate are more obvious, really helped me empathize in ways that I haven't experienced before. So it's been very valuable for me in terms of sort of understanding a lot of things. It's a really good group. There's a lot of diversity here, a lot of openness. People are willing to discuss whatever they want to discuss and don't have a lot of fear about it. I really like our community. That's all I have to say right now.
Hey folks, Greg Battleman here. I actually just found out about this group maybe a month and a half ago through work and joined in, and I have to admit, I wish this group had existed and I knew about it about 18 years ago when my son was an infant. You know, we've you know, very successfully, my wife and I tackled a lot of the challenges that people face, and you know, what I find is that there are a lot of experiences that other people have that are similar to ours. And I know that, you know, I wish I had people more mature than me when I was younger who could say, oh, I experienced this and here's 5 ideas. May or may not work for you, but you know, it may work and it worked for other people. And so, you know, I love the idea of the group being, you know, so open and diverse and inclusive. And I see actually also a role of, at least at my age, and where my son is at, of giving back to the community. You know, to be able to say, hey, you know, this is what we did with our son and this worked, or this is what we did and it didn't work. So in any case, I'm looking forward to being part of the group going forward.
I guess I'm next. I'm Kaveh Adel. I have been a member of the group since its beginning. And before that, I was actually part of a group that Dr. Nassif had put together, Autism Brainstorm, and that was extremely helpful. This group has been immensely helpful. You know, there's a lot of phases that we go through our life. I have 2 children that are on the spectrum. I have a 16-year-old God help us, he's driving and he's doing great. And I've got a 14-year-old, or 13-year-old actually, who has now decided that he wants to wear teenager clothes, which is awesome. So it's been wonderful. And as a result of that, I also had to dive in and find out if I was on the spectrum, which I, after getting diagnosis, I am. And that was immensely helpful, because my wife had always told me that look in the mirror, because a lot of times the anger would bubble up or the frustration would bubble up, and she said to look in the mirror. And I think that was a really good point that she brought up, because when I look in the mirror, I see my fellow brothers here who have been instrumental in helping me grow as a human being. And as a result of that, I've been able to give back to the students that I teach. And I think this has been immensely helpful. And I think and anyone who's on the fence, whether or not they would feel comfortable, the beauty of this group is the fact that they're non-judgmental. And I believe firmly in going deep into the wound that we feel. The light, the light enters and where the wound is. I think that's from a Rumi quote, poem. And I'm a firm believer in that. I think there's joys and there's pains, and I think we've been able to share that along with each other here, and I think that's been immensely helpful. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, this is John. This is actually my first session, so I was just made aware of this. So I wasn't sure if I was to be a panelist or more learning from the rest of the group, but here I am nonetheless. Thank you for the opportunity of being part of this. Very similar stories to the rest of you, that I was led here by my wife, who had uncovered that this group existed, which was a fantastic find, because I think, we've really tried to tag team how we can live with, we have my son who will be 11 in a few months, who was diagnosed at 2, a neurotypical daughter who is 8. But we've always tried to, be able to cope and manage together, but had found that emotionally the support groups always seem to revolve around moms. And, I never had contemplated that there could be a place where dads could get together. So I didn't even think to look. And but my wife did, and here I am, and I'm thrilled that there's a group here. And from what it sounds like, you're very supportive. I don't have much to share other than that, probably what's common to all of you is that, for us, I don't know that I had expectations once Ben was diagnosed or anything like that. I think more so it's just been the challenge of how hard autism impacts all 4 of us, and not just how hard it is for my son, but how hard it is on my relationship with my wife, my wife's relationship with me, and then particularly how my daughter fits into all of this. And so that's been one of the things that I'll be looking for support from the group on just trying to understand how to put, this is our life, and how do you piece it all together to make sure that all 4 of our needs are being met appropriately. And certainly as us as parents, what that means, from how much time we spend with my son that he needs, and then not forgetting we have a daughter who has needs as well, despite being neurotypical. So those are probably the biggest challenges that I would see and be bringing to the table with this group. But just thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
To our, my name is Michael Hannon, as I mentioned earlier. To our guests who are with us, who have not been with us before, either as an attendee or a first-time father in the group, we just again want to extend our welcome to you. And hopefully you can hear what community sounds and feels like. I think this group, for me, stands at the intersection of gender, of race, and ability status. And we got to make sense of all of it, depending on what's happening in our world. And what I would say, just a little bit about me. So I'm a husband and the father of 2 dope children. My daughter is 18 years old and just finished her first year of college, so we're super excited about that. And our son Avery, my daughter's name is Niall, and our son Avery is 17, and like Kave's son, is driving now and is on the spectrum. And we would we would describe Avery as dually exceptional. Avery's the kind of guy who, in his earlier years, he was diagnosed with PDD-NOS. And if you're in the community, you likely know what that means: pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. And we've been fortunate, we've been privileged because Avery has developed the capacity to verbally communicate in ways that we understand, where some families, you got to come up with an entirely new communication system and communication patterns. Avery has honors courses, and he also has a 504 plan. And so in many cases, at times, folks may not suspect that he's a guy who's autistic or living on the spectrum. Two things I'll share really quickly. Joining the chorus of thanking our wives or our partners, there was a time when we were a younger family, and we would go to, I live in South Jersey in the Philly region, and we would go to Sesame Place every summer. And there was a day at Sesame Place that was specifically for autistic children and their families. And my wife described this day for us as a Black family affected by living on the spectrum as the first day of no apologies, where we did not have to give an entire dissertation about what our children were experiencing when they were experiencing sensory overload or anything else that may have just made them uncomfortable. And then they communicated in their own way, and the broader community didn't have to interpret it because we knew, and the community who was with us in Sesame Place, they knew. And so what this group represents is the opportunity to not have to apologize, to be unapologetic about our children and their strengths and their assets. The second thing I'll share is this. In one of our first meetings, there were two gentlemen who used to come from North Jersey. And he talked about a moment when his child was having a tough time. And we all began to affirm his experiences and wanting to attend to his child's needs, just like we all do in this moment. And we acknowledge that our children who live on the spectrum, and please hear this as sensitively as I can say that, they have abilities that we don't, straight up and down. And so what I remember conveying to this father, and other fathers chiming in, saying that our children had the capacity to sense things in our environment that we, who describe ourselves as neurotypical, just couldn't read. And so when there was tension, when there was conflict, and it was unspoken, I know my son used to respond to that. And it was an accountability check for me to deal with whatever was in the room, whether it was between my partner and me, whether it was between my other child and me, or something else. And this group has reminded us to make sure we take stock of the assets and the strengths of our children and the ones we love who are artistic, and not just the things that we don't understand and then begin to pathologize them. So welcome. And as always, excited to be engaged with y'all. Anybody else?
Thanks for all that, Mike. Wow. Maybe a way we could all build on that is what's a key lesson we learned? And I can just say briefly, like the fathers of many non-speaking children I've met and minimally verbal, you know, they tell me they have these imaginary conversations with their sons and daughters. And I've certainly had a bunch of those. And in my most recent silent conversation, my son told me, "Dad, it's not about you, it's about me." And I was so humbled in a really beautiful way. It was very sweet. And I am sure that that's the truth, that my difficulties needed to be aired out primarily in a space like this, with other fathers, with other parents, and that he needed to be more shielded from my more difficult emotions. And this group, you know, and you know, I'm still around with him, and even though he's almost as old as Matt, I plan on being here a while. And so a really powerful lesson that I pass on that he's taught me in my imagination, which has been very real through his life. Anyone else?
Robert, if I can just build off of that, there's a parenting book that we've started reading about positive parenting. And one of the, I think, biggest points that it makes, that it's so simple and obvious, is that it's along the lines that you just said, that it's not about you. And it basically says that if you're having an argument with your child, particularly a child who has special needs, and you're the one that's getting inflamed and irritated, then you're the fool in the argument. And really, you know, it was seeing that on paper, you know, it makes you do an about face of what am I doing here? You know, for both of us, that you assume the role as a parent is to be unilateral, and sometimes it feels like it's I don't want to say retaliatory, but like kind of the arms race of they're escalating and you're escalating. And it said, if you're doing that, you're the fool in the argument. And it put into so much better context how we need to think about, my wife and I think about being parents, is having to be the parent, being the one that's in our 40s, and having the maturity and the ability to reassure our child who is trying to be good, and making that assumption that our child is good and doesn't have the tools to be able to meet the moment. And that, to me, I think, you know, that for my wife and I, it's unlocked a lot of different ways that we think about our child and just parenting altogether. I just wanted to piggyback off of your comment of it's not about you, because that really feels like the same thing we were just reading.
We've got a bunch of hands next, but I want to say to the audience, because I saw somebody had a question in the audience, if you have questions for us, type them into the chat and we will be answering them. So use the chat function to actually spell out your question. So I'm not sure who is next, but I know there's a message out here for you.
I think Arnell's up next.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Robert. What I wanted to say was that I have 4 kids, and they are all on the spectrum, and 2 of them have also, along with autism, have intellectual disabilities. And what we've been trying to help them with is learning how to express what they're feeling or thinking, and learning how to advocate for themselves. We've been trying to nurture their ability to speak. I think many times, even I forget that it's not easy for them to just speak and take for granted and put these ideas together and then transfer it to someone else. So when you see them trying to advocate for themselves, it's really important that you try to facilitate them and protect them. One of the things that I've seen before is that my youngest was trying to express what he was thinking, why he was feeling upset, yet the adult he was interacting with was really just talking over him, shutting him down. I could see that he was getting really frustrated. So these skills, being able to see, is really important to develop. And I want to say some of the guys here said that they're on the spectrum. I'd like to say that I am on the spectrum too. I was diagnosed after my kids were diagnosed, and I can understand or somewhat empathize with what they're feeling, and because it's hard for me too to communicate. Sometimes these ideas, all these feelings, they all just get jumbled up inside me, and it's really difficult to express it and relate it to someone else. So I just wanted to say that it's really important to try to help your children advocate for themselves and develop these abilities to try to communicate, whether they're verbal or nonverbal. I understand that, you know, whatever situation they're in, we want to try to presume competence, not the opposite, because the opposite would mean that you're not even giving them a chance to be competent. And that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
So a lot of the lessons that have been surprising for me and helpful along these same lines have been my father, who is almost certainly autistic as well, but never diagnosed, and has had a very interesting and difficult life because of that, is near the end of his life right now. And he broke his hip a little while ago, and he's been in nursing care since then. And his dementia is catching up with him now. That sort of accelerated the entire race there as well. So now he is very rapidly moving towards a state of being unable to communicate. And there have been a lot of lessons that I've learned from this group and the stories that have been told about how to be present, how to be there, about it being about him, not about me, which have been very valuable here. It's also an odd situation. I don't know if anyone else here has gone through a similar sort of thing, but it's odd because you're watching things devolve as opposed to expecting things to be getting better. So this isn't exactly the experience that we talk about all the time. We try to be hopeful, and we try to be looking for the next best thing and what we can do to support and aspire and push that forward. But, you know, these things happen too. And what we've talked about and what we've discussed here have been very helpful for me in the context of that. I think another important thing here too to talk about is that there's so many different fathers of different ages here and different experiences, have been fathers for different lengths of time. And there's all sorts of different perspectives you get from the same situation that's brought out. You get to hear from people who went through this 25 years ago. You get to hear from someone who went through this 2 years ago. You know, you get to hear from someone who's going through it now. You know, that's really huge because it helps me put it in perspective. It really does. It helps me get a sense of what my problem is, what our problem is relative to, you know, the scale of the world and the scale of everything that's going on. So it's extraordinarily helpful for me. This is a great group.
I guess I'll go next. I don't know if I'm on the spectrum or autistic. Well, I do and I don't. It's something that Robert and I have discussed briefly, but I haven't found it necessary to get diagnosed, at least up until this point in time. But I can share one thing with all of you, that the things that frustrates me and makes it difficult for me to communicate with my son is when he does things that I don't like about myself that makes me uncomfortable. That is like the main common thread that I can find, you know? So having someone, a safe space where we can like doing bi-weekly therapy where I actually take up most of the time, and sometimes Gregor he always gets to go first. We have a neutral place where we can meet, and if there's something that if there's a bridge that needs to be built, we reach out and we get help from somebody else, which is, in this case, is Robert, and you know, we're able to overcome our difficulties, you know. When I don't like something about myself, I experience fear, and the easiest way out is to get frustrated and start just cutting through stuff. So we've gotten a lot better to it. Gregor has thrived through the pandemic, and he's a musician, something that I can't relate to. I can't play anything, and he's fantastic in the piano. And during the pandemic, he has taken up cooking, which is a passion that I've always been of me. And he probably cooks more different food for the family than, he's 11 years old. I mean, the skills that this child has just because we give him space to do it it's amazing. But again, the main thing I want to convey here is there's no doubt, and this is just common human experience that we're sharing here, is if I shut myself up and I get frustrated, it's most likely something about myself that I don't want to look at. So having a group, having a therapist to find neutral ground has just been priceless. It's a life skill. I was 38 when I learned how to ask for help, and I'm 60 now, so I'm getting a little better at it. There's hope that I might be good at it before I leave this planet. Thank you.
I think the lesson for me, and I share the same thing, Jesper. I think it's that whole mirror thing is really, really helpful for all of us to see. And you know, part of that frustration, part of that fear that comes from me is the fact that I don't want them to repeat the mistakes and the things that I have, the pain that I felt probably. And I didn't know that I was on the spectrum until after they were diagnosed. And so over 6 years of my life, I probably suffered and didn't know why, didn't have an answer. But what really I think brings me back as far as the big lesson has been that whatever I'm interested in is not necessarily what they're interested in. And I have to be interested in what they're interested in. I mean, I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt. No, it happens to be that I love Star Wars, but my oldest son absolutely is enamored by it. So everything you need to know in Wikipedia, he knows. And I better know it, because if I don't know, then I have, you know, not lived up to his expectations of being a good father. So, and my younger one loves Mario. So he comes over and just draws me all these things, and I have it right on my desk every night. And if I don't keep them in front of me and I don't remember them, then I'm not engaged. In communication, I think that's the big part, because each one of them communicates in the stories that they love. My oldest one will communicate in a language that is a Star Wars language, and I have to decipher what he's meaning about a relationship or it's something that didn't go well in school. So, and my younger one will communicate in Mario language, so I have to understand what he means. And if I don't, so in a way, we have to become translators of this. And as a result of that has made me a better human being. And a lot of that was shared in the group, that I need to be more in tune with what they love. Yes, where you said about cooking. My younger one loves to cook, so he looks on YouTube videos, and we give him the space as long as it's a safe thing. And yep, he starts cooking and making stuff, and some of it doesn't look good, but tastes amazing. And you betcha, I'm gonna go and buy him a whole bunch more asparagus next time, so he can do that. But that being said, I think that's been the big lesson for me, and I think this group has been instrumental in doing that, and I do appreciate that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess I introduced myself. I'm Matt Wheeler. It says there on the screen too, but you know, and I'm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And I would say, I feel like there are a lot of lessons that I could give. I think that the biggest one for me is just, this group continues to be a reminder to take joy in the journey. To, like, I often tell Luke, I'm happy to be his dad. I'm glad he's my son. And like, usually to end the day, because there's so many things that happen during the day, it's easy to get caught up in things, have our own chinks in our armor get revealed and things. And yeah, it's nice to have a place that, like, it's not like I'm making a list exactly, maybe mentally, about like things I want to talk about in the group, but it's like I actually have an outlet for that. There's actually a place to talk about those things and to be understood and heard. And I think that helps me to be a better dad and to put things in perspective and to love my son better. I know Kaveh is one in particular who's talked about letting your child lead. Basically, the way I would put it to kind of complement that is like to like study your child, like to understand what makes them tick. To some extent, if you're trying to be a good parent, you're going to do that. But I think to name it that way is helpful, because then it encourages me to understand the things that he enjoys and makes him tick. Like my son, minimally verbal as he is, loves music. He doesn't sing. Sometimes he tries, and I'm a musician. So I get out my guitar. He's very intrigued, and then I'll do a song he knows, and then leave out a word and kind of like look at him, and he happily like fills in the blank. Like just like I never would have guessed before I became a dad that that's one of the things I'd be doing, but that's where it is. And it's it's just a matter of, learning so much from him. Before I ever became a dad, I know that I heard a lot of people talk about like having special needs kids and like how they taught them like joy and perseverance and determination and things like this. And I remember thinking like, okay, I can't say I really understand that, but that sounds good. And then, that's what I have, and it's true. It definitely is true. And I continue to learn daily. And also, I'd just say one more thing, like in taking joy in the journey, celebrating the small victories. Like the other day, the other month, I should say, I remember I was taking a picture with my son, and he said cheese to the camera. I'm like, I don't remember teaching him that. And I brought it to the group and mentioned it, and everyone's like, yeah, like, high fives virtually. And like, it's like, yeah, like if I was at work, I wouldn't just be like, hey, everybody, my son said cheese to the camera. It'd be like not really knowing how to respond. So yeah, this has helped me to take joy in the journey. And thank you. So anyone else?
Hey folks, Craig here. I had two things I wanted to share. One is something that Kava mentioned that really struck a nerve with me. Well, he was talking about his kids in Star Wars and Mario. Ours were my son's fixation was, or still is, antique cars and sports cars, and as such, we learned all about cars, and we play a game every night as to who saw the best car during the day, and we go to car museums across the country, and sometimes multiple times. But we also communicated to all of his teachers in grade school that they ought to be learning about cars and ought to have a car magazine on hand, so that if there was difficulty, they could redirect his attention to something that he loved and alleviate a stressful situation. So, but I didn't really think about that until Kava spoke about Star Wars. That was really cute. One of the things that I think I learned was, people spoke about, you first have to accept that your child has autism. And for me, that part was, I made that leap pretty quickly. The next part that I didn't really understand, that one of my son's therapists had to explain to me, was that my son didn't choose to have autism, and therefore I couldn't interact with him in a way that I thought I was interacting with maybe a different child, or even my own extrapolating my own skills to my son. That wasn't going to be realistic, and so I had to step back, and I think someone else had said, if there's difficulty in a dialogue or an interaction with your child's probably not the one at fault. The child's probably working really, really hard to communicate, and you just, for whatever reason, aren't hitting it, and maybe you're stressed and had a bad day, or maybe you just haven't had the situation before. And once I was able to kind of have it click in my mind that my son didn't choose this, whenever then there was a stressful situation, it did become a little easier to step back and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? Do I need to approach this differently? The other piece it made me do was then for my wife and I to step back and say, okay, how do we anticipate these stressful situations in the future? What do we need to do ourselves to alleviate that? But what skills do we try and need to teach our son, even if it's a micro skill, to slowly build up his ability to address stressful situations like whatever happened in the future? But the first step was understanding that I couldn't interact with my son the way in a way that I thought was simple and natural, and it just wasn't for him. And once I was able to step back and do that, it made it a lot easier then to say, wait a minute, how should I be interacting with my son? And then how should my teachers, and so on and so forth. So that's what I learned.
So one of the things emerging here is the contributions of those fathers, those brothers and group members who are neurodivergent diagnostically. However, a more important issue is that all of the symptoms of autism, every single one of them, are part of the human condition, and we all share some of them. And it's that essential human connection that underlies everything. Without that, nothing is possible. And I think, you know, comments like Craig's like underline that. But go down that list of symptoms. Any of you listening, any of you here, if you don't have some of them, you're on another planet. We're all on this planet and all share some of them. One of the most common questions that I get at conferences is, how do I get my husband, my partner, my boyfriend to open up, to come to a group like this? Or, you know, like maybe we could kick that around a little while we have time. And nobody's actually asked it in the chat, but I'd be surprised if there aren't some women there thinking it. Arnell, your hand's up. Go for it.
All right. You know, I actually was one of the folks that was resistant to coming to this group, Robert, because I still remember it was really my wife who, I was going to say encouraged, but it was more like, you're going to go, you need to go. This is an amazing group. You need to go check it out. And I think just to placate her, I said, fine, I'm going to go. And ended up just loving the group. So I know I'm not really answering your question other than, yeah, I think my wife kind of gave me a shove on the rear end to come to the group. And that's what it took to get me there. Anyone else?
You are exactly answering the question. That's how it often happens.
I think that as groups like these become more prevalent, and as more people learn about autism and neurodiversity in general, then it becomes easier for other people to join the group, because I think there's maybe a less of a stigma for some people. And so there's the part of, hey, I need a good push, or a crisis happened and I better go do something about the crisis. But in absence of those two, I think just having more awareness and more acceptance then leads to more participation.
If I may add something real quick, I think it was a matter of pride. I'm a man. I can solve my own problems, kind of thing. And it just took my wife with that comment, and look in the mirror thing, as I keep repeating that. It's like, you know what, suck it up, buddy. Your sons and I and your family need a better version of you. In a very nice way, not you know, undercutting what I was thinking, but in a very nice, loving way. She said, you know what, I think you would benefit from a third party. Just go and air it out, get it out of your system, go see if there's other things that are out there. And I think that's the biggest hurdle for me as a man, and for maybe from some of my fellow brothers here, is the fact that, you know, I can fix things. You know, I'm a dentist by trade, I'm an artist by trade. You know, I can fix things, and why can't I fix myself? You know, what you said, Jesper, about, you know, the frustration that built up, and nothing better than that release. And I think the first meeting that we had was a sigh of relief, I think, was the fact that, wow, okay, I needed this. I really needed this. Anyone else?
I'll jump in for a second and just say, to Robert's question, you know, how might folks in the community get more men to attend who are living with this experience? And I'm just reminded of how we have to reframe things. It's hard work to be socialized to think that boys and men are generally allowed to express lust and anger. And quite frankly, it's like it's heterosexual lust. It's like straight lust and anger, and everything else is considered either feminine or weak or vulnerable. And so some of the work that we have to do in our communities is to remind folks that we can reframe what strength looks like. And strength is actually asking for help. How many of us, I'll speak for myself, how many times have I been in a space in my head when I didn't think I needed help. And then when I was forced to either get help or was strong enough to ask for help, realized how much I was missing when I got the help I was seeking, right? So there has to be a reframing of what it means to be strong and what it means to be wise, because to be strong and to be wise is to ask for help when you need it. That takes some reframing, and it takes some courage, because you'll likely stand out. So that's what I would encourage anybody who has a father figure who may need the kind of support that we attempt to offer. Anybody else?
So I think for me, anxiety is a huge problem. And when I am having anxiety, I am not going to be very thoughtful, mindful. I'm going to be very reactive and defensive, and I'm not going to be a very good father. I'm not going to be a very good husband. And when situations come up, I'm going to be behaving in ways that are not the best for handling the situation. The more I know going into a situation, the less anxiety I have. So I'd say that that's probably one of the biggest things that you could use as for someone like me as a carrot to try to get them to join the group is we're giving you stories, we're giving you context, we're giving you a resource to ask other people who've been through the same sort of problems or similar problems and in different ways. And you can prepare yourself for that situation. Like, I never expected the situation with my father. I never expected the need to be able to manage a nonverbal autistic human being in my family being a skill I would need to have. And I need that skill right now, right? This group gave me the skills for doing that. So that's what I would say would be a very good carrot to sort of dangle for people as well. We're giving you tools.
I would just add to that. I mean, really, it might be helpful for people who are hesitant or don't know what they're getting into to recognize that, like, there's not really a program to this. Like, it's not like, like it's a study and like we have certain questions we're going to work through, or like a workbook. Like, it's none of that. It's more akin to catching up with a bunch of guys in a similar situation for coffee. There are a lot of times that our conversations, like, especially Robert or Michael will point out, like, hey, well, so like they'll name like a theme that they're hearing, because that's how conversations go. Plus also, I mean, like, the fact that it's online through Zoom really puts the bar pretty low as far as risk. You can jump off at any time you need, but at the but seriously, like it takes distance off the table as being a problem. I think there's will be time conflicts, but it just makes it so accessible, and hopefully makes it really easy for people to try it out, and hopefully people will taste and see that it is this. It's a really good thing, and hopefully the recording of this will help serve that purpose too, where it's like, someone's like, I have no idea what to do here. Like, this is someone can watch a recording and get some sense as to how this tends to work. Because this is, even though this is being recorded, this is really, really similar to how this usually works. It's maybe slightly more structured, but it's otherwise really close. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you, everyone. Anyone else?
Pre-pandemic, when we met in person, we did start with coffee. So maybe we'll have virtual coffee cups here. I don't know, maybe something. But I think this is a great conversation here about how guys think, guy talk. See, we're action oriented. That's why we're always trying to fix stuff. If we can, to sort of build on some things that have been said, learning to listen and speak our inner truth is an action. It's not the unique territory of women. It's also open to men. And that wish to take action and fix things, that's also part of how we show our love. But being a better listener, being more open and honest about how we feel can help us to do that. So all this stuff kind of blends together and helps us be, better versions of ourselves. So let's keep sharing this. I think this is what people need and want to hear. John, you got your hand up. Go for it.
Yes, I can't agree with you guys any more greatly in that. Just what Mike was saying, and you just reiterated that it might take courage to come on, or humility, but that, we step up and do these things because we are wanting wisdom from others who have been there before us. We're gathering wisdom to fix our car. When we don't know how to fix our car, we seek someone out to do it, or seek someone out who's had trouble with their car before. So why wouldn't we do it in this aspect of raising our children with autism? And it does. It's you're being brave and putting yourself out there in a protective environment that's not only going to help you, but it's going to help others. And I think that's what the community is all about. Anyone else?
Yeah, since we're talking, something that Pete had said about anxiety and trying to lessen the anxiety really rang a bell with me, because I know that with my son, he needed to get on a bus to be taken to a school where they were going to test him for 2 weeks. He had never been on a bus in his life. He never rode the school bus. He'd always just been driven places. And so what we needed to do, or what we felt we should do, was prepare him to what the bus experience would be like. So what we ended up doing was we actually contacted the bus company, and they allowed us to come to their facility, and we got to meet the bus driver, and he learned that he established a relationship. He got to know the bus driver even before he got on the bus. And what was very nice was he has sometimes issues with loud noises. So they allowed him to get on the bus. The bus driver even turned on the bus so he could get used to the noise. The nice thing about this was it was just him and the bus driver on the bus, and there were no other kids at the moment. So he was able to settle in and get used to it. He was given an assigned seat so he can get used to where he was going to be at. So the next day, when he got on the bus, we were successful. There were no meltdowns. There were no panic attacks. He got to school, went to school. He did his testing. He did great, but a lot of that took effort. And the whole thing was preparing him, giving him an idea over what the experience was going to be like, as close as we could make it. And that really helped a lot. And so, yes, I think for many of our kids on the spectrum, there's an extreme amount of anxiety there, and preparing them in advance really helps facilitate them having a more positive experience. Anyone else?
Arnel, to piggyback on what you said, that story that you shared, I think this is a story that you shared with us in another session that we were talking about. I actually used something similar to that in one of the lectures I gave to my dental students about making sure that we are desensitizing the young or the young adult who is on the spectrum to come and visit the dental, for example, setting. That could be, for anything. Could be going and getting a haircut, could be going to a new class that they're going to be attending, could be going to summer camp, and having all those tools in place. And as a parent, we need to advocate and make sure that we communicate that in advance to wherever we're going to be having our children or our young adults go to. And I think that that has allowed me, so that part of the thing that I want to say is that this group has allowed me to actually provide a better curriculum for my students, who are going to be going out there, and they might be sometimes the first line of defense in identifying children who may be, and parents who might be frustrated with this. There's a disparity, and we're talking about disparity in access to care in underserved areas, and there's a 4-to-1 ratio of the young children who are Black who are not being diagnosed in time. And incidentally, they don't have access to their pediatrician first, and they get to go to a dental visit because they have a dental emergency first. So a dentist might be the first line that they might be seeking. So anyway, this group has allowed me to be a better human being, but also has allowed me to improve the curriculum for over 500 students that are going to be going out there and become dentists who are going to be able to provide better care. Anyone else?
So we're giving people a window into how our group usually works. So this is largely similar. So about 5 minutes before the end, we usually meet for just an hour, but today it's a little more open-ended, but we've been meeting for a little over an hour. So we take about 5 minutes and just go around the room and people quickly share their takeaways. Then we usually end with a minute of silence. I don't know that we want to record a minute of silence, but we do that to reflect on what we've learned and our own role going forward that day, that week, that month with our families and so on. But so let's take about 5 minutes to just go around the room and share our takeaways. And I don't know if we're all looking at the same screen, but maybe we start with John and just go around, if you're ready.
All right, guys, what I would like to reflect is a time to say thank you to my brothers that have been in this group, both now and before previous groups. I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful for the two guys who are leading it, Mike and the doctor. So thank you, guys, and let's keep on making an effort to make ourselves better men.
I'll go next. Craig here, and first session, and I really, really appreciate participating and actually listening to everybody else's stories. One, it helps me know that we're not 100% unique in my family, and that there's other people out there that have similar challenges, and that's always great, because I think someone had said early on, if you think you're unique and you go to talk to your friends about your challenges, you get a blank stare. And it sounds like here you get, oh yeah, we've been there, we've done that, and we totally know how that goes. So I look forward to participating in the future. I think this is fantastic.
I'll go after Craig just because it's similar sentiment being new to the group. I've really appreciated hearing all the individual stories and all the challenges that we all have to face. I think having a sense of community is just, it's a top priority, and it sounds like that this is a really great place to have that sense of community in what can otherwise really be a very lonely life. And so just really appreciate everyone's openness and honesty about looking themselves in the mirrors and being honest about how hard their lives are and the ways they see the need to improve themselves. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you.
To use some of the words that John did, yeah, I would also say thank you, and thank you all and everyone who's been a part of this group and will be, for having the courage and humility to be part of it, to overcome the anxiety and pride and other things that we can all relate to be here. And thank you for all of you for sharing wisdom from your own experiences, just by sharing your own stories. You're doing that. And I just want to affirm you all and say you're doing a great job. You might not hear that much, but you're doing a great job as a dad. Anyone else?
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, it's thinking about and reflecting on sort of what this group has done for me personally. It's just such a fantastic assemblage of people. I think of it like a group of like the village elders. Like, you get to hear from the people who've been there. And when I say the elders, I mean, it's, if you have a child with autism, 3 years can be a lifetime, right? Like, so like people, like the experiences that are here are just so important. And this is how I learned. is by listening to people and hearing people and talking to people. And so this has been a huge portion of me learning skills over the last year. And I really appreciate what you guys have done. And don't forget, Happy Father's Day too.
I guess I'll go next. There are not much I can talk about humility, and it's a term that's largely misunderstood, mostly because when we think about it as being humiliated, and there's a great difference between humility and getting humiliated. Humility, as I understand, has to do with knowing the truth, no more, no less. And I cannot see the truth without having other people pointing out the blind side. So this group has I haven't been able to attend during the pandemic because of my work, and I'm hoping that somehow, the schedule will change so I'll be able to attend today, because I really, really enjoy group work. Now, one of the things that, and I got confirmed the thing that Gregor has aced the pandemic because he has had the ability to work with smaller groups of people and not being overwhelmed. When he returned to live school about 2 months ago, a lot of the issues he experienced before had gone away because he's interacted with the same small group of people in a couple of settings through the entire pandemic. And he has become a young adult who can make choices for himself. And I really need to honor that and be more aware of his needs and give him space to be a young adult rather than just my kid, So, and just listening to everybody reaffirm that. I'm so glad that I engaged him before we get into the group to just tell me what his view of all this is. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm so happy I could attend today. You have no idea. In my line of work, I can't break away even for an hour if the group happened to be meeting, and then whether it's Zoom or not. So thank you, everyone.
I'll go next. I'm happy to have been able to join this group. It's really a pleasure to be able to share with the guys here their experiences and their stories. It just gives me a feeling of not being alone in this challenge. And I think, like Matt said, I feel like I found my tribe. And so I just wanted to say thank you again. Anyone else?
I guess I'll go next. What I have to say is that, I wasn't comfortable sharing my feelings in many sessions, but a few sessions ago, I think I opened up a lot more. I showed a little more vulnerability than I'm comfortable with. And that's because I felt that this group, like you said, it's a tribe. Matt, you said it. Arnelli said it. But I think the cave that we fear holds the treasure that we seek. And at the end of that, I paraphrase Joseph Campbell, is that at the end of that cave is what I found was unconditional love from all of you. And I think that's my takeaway, that there was never a judgment, there's never a judgment, and it's just complete acceptance and understanding and open arms. And I treasure that. Thank you very much.
Super excited and humbled to hear all the feedback. I want to say thank you as well for being in community and me allowing me to be in community with y'all. I'll say to those who celebrate and recognize Juneteenth, happy Juneteenth to you, and happy Father's Day to everybody who's celebrating and acknowledging the father figures and the other fathers in their lives and the biological fathers. I think my takeaway is to continue for us and for me to continue to be sensitized, like remain sensitive, because our children or the people who we love who are autistic, they're at such risk to being marginalized, just like Black folks are at such risk and are victims of being marginalized. And this experience, if you've not been marginalized before for any one of your identities, you know in your heart of hearts that your children or your loved ones who are autistic have likely been and are at risk of being marginalized continually. And so Black Lives Matter And when Black lives matter, all lives will matter. And if we can keep our fingers on the pulse of those who are victimized most frequently, like our children at times, because of their identities as autistic people, we likely will be more inclined and more humanized to support other folks who are marginalized. So happy Juneteenth, happy Father's Day, and I appreciate y'all. Anybody else?
I guess I'm last. Again, thank you. Happy Juneteenth, happy Father's Day, and every day is a day to celebrate fatherhood, to be anti-racist, to fight for peace and justice in our world every day. Likewise, I feel humbled. I realize I'm a teacher of sorts here, but I'm also a student. So I learn every time we meet. And I learn every day. I learn from my children. My son's a man of color. He kind of looks like Trayvon Martin, and I have pictures of the young Tariq. He looks a little like Barack Obama, Trayvon Martin, a man of mixed race, but a man of color. And his life inspires me to do the right thing, And I kind of, and I always think of Dr. Martin Luther King. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And our children and our family members can help us bend that arc toward justice. If we listen to them, if we're sensitive to them, we'll never forget who we are and our blessings and our challenges, and just bending that arc toward justice. And that's, to me, one of the best parts of this group is our diversity across faith and race and culture and neurology, across it all. So I thank you all for listening. It always warms my heart to try to make a difference. And thanks for everyone who listens to this, for listening to all our voices. So goodbye for now. Wishing you peace. Shalom, salam. Bye for now, everyone. Have a great day.